Hello and welcome to Design Education Talks by the New Art School. We're going to something different today. I'm going to share some thoughts with you and, of course, introduce our guest. So there are moments in culture where making more images is not what we need. What we need instead is to learn how to see again, to read slowly, to pay attention, to remain with the question long enough for it to change us. Education at its deepest level is not the training of professionals. It is the formation of perception, the shaping of judgment, the quiet, often invisible work through which a human being learns to stand in relation to the world with care, clarity, and responsibility. In an age of acceleration, visibility, and endless production, the studio can still be a place of slowness, a place where thinking happens through making, where reading, editing, drawing, and arranging become ways of understanding time itself, not as speed, but as duration, not as output, but as attention. Today's conversation is an invitation into that slower space. My guest, Esen Karol, works across editorial design, exhibition design, publishing, and teaching, fields that all share a common concern: how culture is shaped, how knowledge is held, and how meaning is transmitted from one generation to the next. Through her practice and through the journal Manifold, she reminds us that publishing can be a form of pedagogy, that typography can carry ethical weight, and that design, as its most is not noise added to the world, but a structure that allows thought to appear. This episode is not only about design, it's about education, about responsibility, about the inner life of the student and the quiet work required to become someone capable of attention in a distracted age. So rather than rushing towards answers, we will move slowly. We will stay with the questions, and we will ask what it might mean to teach, to learn, and to practice design as a way of becoming more fully human. This is Design Education Talks podcast, and this is a conversation with our wonderful guest, Esen Karol. Welcome, Esen.
Thank you. Wow, what a start.
So welcome. So tell us about you and your work.
Well, I'm a graphic designer. I think I'm a graphic designer before everything else, before being a woman or human, etc., etc. This means for me that I approach and perceive everything through this lens, I would say. I don't know how that happened. Maybe it was there to begin with. Maybe this is why I became a graphic designer. I can't pinpoint it. I specialize in editorial design. I guess because I found my way to graphic design while reading. I learned playing tennis, reading a book. That sort of transformed my whole perception of text, I would say. I was 10 or 11 and nobody knew how to teach it in Istanbul. And my father brought me a couple of books from Germany, and learning a very technical, very physical sport by reading made me want. Of course, I practiced on my own. It wasn't just reading. So yeah, I mean, editorial. I'm mainly an editorial designer, though I do a lot of other things, usually related to the editorial project that I'm working on. And also, almost 10 years ago, I launched my sort of cultural criticism journal, as you mentioned, Manifold, which is open to contribution, because also I started it with zero capital. So it's kind of also a community building project, I would say. Yeah,
wonderful.
That's it.
That's really wonderful. So tell us about your work in design education.
Well, that was quite a journey. I started very young. One of my senior thesis advisor from my bachelor's studies, Yurdar Altıntaş, invited me to teach at Mimar Sinan University. I had taught a couple of classes before, but that was serious. That was my own school, and that was going to be 2 courses. And I said, I can do it. He said, you can't know whether you can do it or not. I know that you can do it. So he threw me into the studio with students who are, not much younger. They were like very close to my age. And maybe because of that, I started teaching like a coach. And also I have a problem with authority, whether it's mine or someone else's. So I started to sit among the students, etc. So it became also my learning experience. It was very hard to learn how to, express ideas, opinions, knowledge that I had in me, but didn't know how to, speak out, I would say. And after that, I think I taught almost for 14 years. Then I stopped because of Manifold, and also I have to talk about this, though you didn't ask. My mind wanders a lot, but the older I got, I think this authority thing started to be an issue. Like my students started to respect me or obey me just because I'm older. And I didn't like that. And also my students started to feel old for some reason. Like, I think I expected from youth quite the opposite, like being against the status quo, and I wanted them to be rebellious. And I started to feel like they are expecting consumers culture that we are surrounded with, like, without questioning. And somehow I started to feel like a tourist in the studio. Like, I had to explain everything. My references didn't mean anything to them anymore, although I understood their references. So I basically quit teaching, and I said to myself I would go back to school only as a student again, And then many, many, many years passed by. I think almost 10 maybe. I relocated to New York, and I realized that school is the only way for me to continue somehow learning. And anyway, I decided to contradict with myself and applied. Luckily, I was accepted as a visiting associate professor to Pratt Institute. I'm teaching at the undergrad department right now. It's such a different experience after almost 10 years not teaching. Entirely different generation, maybe even generations. Of course, a different city, different country, different world.
So what you're saying is of great importance, and you're highlighting some very important aspects of the challenges we're all facing today.
Yeah, one thing that maybe I would like to add, because I just want to close the circle that I started. Now I realize I can't be a coach. Like, I really need to be a teacher. This is, I think, the main difference. I feel like students do ask for more instructions, more. Yeah, they. I feel like they ask for more teaching. This we may maybe talk more. Though, like when you lecture them, they don't like it. But of course, the way you do it has to be taught very, very different compared to our generation's learning methods, maybe. But on the other hand, they do ask to be taught, actually, although not with the words. This is the way I feel it. Like, they need more explanations, more guidance, more technical and emotional support. And so for the first time, I think, in my teaching journey, contrary to thinking of many people, I feel my age actually works as an advantage. Like, education could be an area where experience really matters.
Absolutely, because there's a continuity. There's something that needs to continue. Do you feel there's something we need to protect that is currently in risk of disappearing? Do you feel that there's something we must protect that might be disappearing?
Many things, actually, because I consider my generation like this a really transitional generation. We might be the last generation who worked with analog technology, but went into digital while still young. I basically graduated using computers. So, like, Photoshop was on a disk when I started working with Photoshop, and it wasn't InDesign. Anyway, I started working with Amiga, so I'm a very...
Well, you had Aldus? You had Aldus?
Basically...
Aldus, yeah.
Pagemaker, yeah. Yeah, of course, yeah.
And later, of course, there was Quark, of course.
Yes, Quark, my love. We were like, like forced to use InDesign at some point. But yeah, I mean, so actually this whole, like the invention of internet, basically, I see it as a blessing that we witnessed all these things and we actually adjusted. We basically watched many professions disappearing and many new professions. We went through a sort of shift, although maybe not as seismic as like the one we are living through right now. But yeah, what is disappearing, I think, is like kind of a maybe you were talking about slowness, like being able to be focused on one thing and to think about one single thing in a very concentrated fashion for a long time. I do think it is incredibly valuable to be able to do that. And also, I think some kind of intimate dialogue between peers, like humans missing, I would say. Maybe have an intimate dialogue sometimes with ChatGPT too. So I can assume how younger people are chatting with their selected, chosen AI. But this human, somehow the messiness of human relationships, the critical aspect of it, the difficulties of it, like difficulties of confrontation, disagreement, too much love, like all these things, like the hard part of being alive, I think is being eliminated somehow, whereas the pain of being alive is still there. So, I mean, I know that I'm not open enough with what I'm saying, but so I feel like my responsibility, this is my 4th semester at Pratt right now. The first semester, I was entirely so shocked. Like I couldn't have eye contact with my students. They didn't have eye contact with each other. Obviously, they all have at least 2 screens in front of them, if not 3. And like there wouldn't be any like heated discussions. I felt like I couldn't even correct a typo. Everything felt like personal attack. Like somehow it was very difficult for me. And now I'm trying. First of all, I decided to approach my students like first time when I started to live with a cat. Like I approach a cat and trying to teach my language and learn their language, and also finding ways of approaching kindly, generously, softly, unthreateningly, etc. But Mama, I am trying to build relationships between them. Actually, that I found like missing. I don't, like students relating to each other. Like this I find the basic, most important thing in an art school, like art and design school, because most of the people who decide to study design or art or architecture for that matter, I think they are a little bit different than other people. I think they benefit most from a school environment because our interaction makes a huge difference, I believe, like working together in a studio, collaborating on projects, discussing with each other, being vulnerable in the studio, like showing your work, being criticized by others. So
no, of course,
I'm sorry,
wonderful.
Again,
it's wonderful. No, it's very valuable what you're saying. No, really. You mentioned something very important. So how can we cultivate this extended, this prolonged attention, and of course patience at a time when everything is shaped by speed, distraction, and constant screens and 3, 4, 5 screens? How can we cultivate that in the shoot?
I really don't have the answer for it. I'm just trying with a lot of effort. But I do feel like, at least in my last 2 semesters, after having very difficult it is still very difficult for me. I feel like it is not being discussed very openly because no one prefers to talk about failures. I feel like actually, like when I openly discuss one of my failures, I realized other faculty have also similar experiences. And I also took Pratt offers great workshops, etc., by the Center for Teaching and Learning. So I attended some workshops there too. I mean, what we can do is probably continue the efforts and discuss what you said about being human. Maybe in this day and age, the most important thing for us is important to understand what makes us human. What is the difference? What are we bringing to the table? I mean, many professionals will get lost. So what can we give the students so they can go to this totally unforeseeable future? I think this generation's task is huge. Until now, I think all generations sort of knew what's going to happen in the next 50 years, and at this point in time, it is so unforeseeable. It is very understandable, their anxiety, their, sometimes mild, sometimes not so mild depression. I'm talking about students right now, although there are also lots of depressed grown-ups. Yeah, I think faith in life, I would say, if I'm using culminate correctly here, like we need to culminate faith in life.
How can we cultivate, again, slow analog studio practice in an increasingly digital design education?
Feeling lost in the noise of social media? Inspo cuts through the clutter, connecting you directly with real insights from real experts and industry leaders. It's a new social network dedicated to knowledge sharing, industry insights, and thought leadership. Get the latest from top minds in your field, or build your own thought leadership portfolio on Inspo. Already trusted by thousands of professionals worldwide, be part of the conversation and download Inspo Experts today on the App Store or visit www.inspo.expert.
I mean, at least what I am trying to, again, I don't have an answer for it. I realized there was something that I was missing, which I realized in this struggle that I am going through. We have our studio classes are almost 5 hours, more than 4 hours, very long. It's very hard to keep students' attention, and we have to everything is on the screen. We have to have laptops, etc., etc. We teach using our own machine. I know that there is faculty who try to work with printouts, etc. when it comes to criticism, but I have never been kind of a print out person. Like, even when I design, I never use paper, not any point, any time. So very digital designer myself. So I realized I biked to school. I hurt my neck. I had to buy an iPad for the first time in my life. And when I started because my laptop was too heavy anyway, and I will shorten the story, but I started to teach with an iPad, and I realized with an iPad, I can be standing. I don't sit. And it feels like a notebook in my hand, and I can use my fingers, zoom in, zoom out more easily, etc. If I don't hear a student very well, I can, without disturbing that student, I can, go closer. I feel like even without eye contact, I can connect with students a bit better. So anyway, this thing in my head changed the way I move in the studio, the way I talk. And I realized suddenly I became more joyful myself because I feel freer, and also I think it's sitting in front of my laptop. I was in my working mode where I am extremely serious. So it made me my mode changed. And then I remembered, oh my God, joy is
contagious. Yeah, contagious.
What things? Contagious. So it's I think I was thinking like my students lack joy, but I realized I lack joy, so going back to, I think like now I started with this, I started to subtle changes with accumulated over a semester. Now I feel like my responsibility is like to share not my knowledge but my joy, so somehow like why am I excited about the double story G, or how can I manage to look at it for a long time? What is there to see actually? Why am I amazed? So like somehow I tried it. I mean, I'm not saying that I started to get more personal, but I started to share this joy and amazement and somehow like, somehow I started to try via this. Of course, I also share information, but and also like this, I always thought about that, but I never thought about trying to teach about it. Like our professions, of course, they are also to earn our bread, but it is actually a way of relating to life. It's not the end destination.
Ways.
Yeah.
So transmitting a certain excitement about the subject is more important than teaching the subject itself.
Yeah. Let's slow down together and let's see. Wow, because when you have joy, everything also, like the way you perceive things, the way you act, you all your behavior, everything changes basically. I think.
So what role does drawing play in your class? How many students are you teaching?
So now minimum 13, maximum 15.
So what role does this drawing play in all that?
I have, since I'm teaching it undergrad and also because of the way our department is structured in some of my classes, I also have illustration students and so for them, it is very important. For me, it never was. Although, of course, I had to be able to draw to succeed in the entrance exams of university. I use writing, maybe because I don't draw that heavily. I see it quite similar, this hand-eye coordination and like thinking with the pen in hand. Writing doesn't necessarily need to be like prose or an essay or something, like even actually like experimenting, like writing, repeating the same word or composing on paper with lettering and stuff like that. I try to bring in exercises done with hand, or just leave some exercises open-ended. I do feel using our hand in a way of is a thinking tool important, but I can't say like I
was wondering if you could use processes like that to slow things down.
Yeah, certainly. In some ways it doesn't necessarily slow things down because these are young students. They are not necessarily, at least they are slower on their machine than I am, as long as they are not text messaging. Of course, they message very quickly, and maybe, like they look at their timeline more quickly than I do. But when it comes to working with software and, doing other things, they are not that quick yet. But handwriting is also like quite quick. I'm not sure about slowing, but there is some kind of maybe. I think I have it. Maybe this is what you mean by slowing. It is, you can reflect more when you draw or write. Like there is a intellectual solitude when you do that. Like when you are on a machine, you are never basically alone. There are a lot of other things on the screen. There are notifications coming. But when you have your pen and some kind of paper, and you are actually, you and your thoughts are alone. Maybe that's not slowness, but that's Yeah, it's kind of a silent and lonely space, which is more important for thinking.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, absolutely.
Would you agree?
So what kind of projects can transform a student's way of seeing rather than simply build a portfolio?
Well, I mean, at this point in life, I am teaching. We have a big program, so we have a lot of sections for the same course. So since I restarted teaching, I'm implementing a syllabus, a course syllabus, which is given to me. Of course, I have a chance to customizing it according to my abilities and thinking, I would say, but I didn't have a chance to design an assignment entirely on my own yet. In this period, my second phase of teaching, I would say. But
I mean, more about your thoughts. How could we help? So transform the way of seeing what practice could help. Because you mentioned the students are anxious, and one of the reasons students are anxious is because they see this labor technology called artificial intelligence changing all the time, and that does create anxiety.
I mean, I believe it is important for them to learn by doing and experiencing. Somehow our assignments or projects need to be experiential, like they need to experience something while doing it, because many projects are really research based, because like in the last 20 years or so, we decided in design education, intellectual depth and research and things like that are really important. I do understand that. But on the other hand, now with the AI, basically they although many of my students at least are against AI ideologically because it's like bad for environment, everything, etc., they do use it for research. So basically, research is gone. Like when you don't do your research on your own, it doesn't, teach you anything. So basically, there needs to be projects where students can't get outside support, but need and experiences what is there on their own, and then actually develop some kind of a belief in their own abilities and personalities, because I think, and also they need to start learning about themselves more and have faith in their own personality, in their own uniqueness somehow. But that, because each of us are unique, but I think over time, and especially in this new political era on the planet, I think we all lose faith in our own actions, gestures, because we feel like we don't matter. On the other hand, I personally still believe that the collectives, all the small gestures collectively are still meaningful. Like somehow in a project, when a student realizes things, their own strength, their own abilities and beauties and problems in life. I don't know how that exactly can be designed, but I know that doesn't happen with roadblocks. This is something that was another shock for me. I mean, now I do ask my students to do that too, because it looks like it's a method. But I can't imagine, when I stopped teaching, there wasn't such a thing as a
coming from another discipline.
And so somehow, I mean, real life experience, like projects which somehow lead them to real life experiences.
I think that's one of the main challenges today, is to have students understand what they're doing as a process of inquiry and as a developmental process, rather than, okay, let's create a portfolio in 2 to 3 years and let's go. And, it's so much different. And of course, it goes against all this anxiety that we talked about earlier, of course.
But I mean, is it, as a designer, when you look at a portfolio, I'm sure this is true for everyone. Obviously, you look for, if you are going to hire someone or looking for an assistant for a project or a collaborator, it doesn't matter. When you look at a portfolio, of course, is you want to have some basic, craft. Like you want to see that the person is capable of
Yes.
doing some things properly, like whatever proper means. But you actually look for personality, right? You look for some kind of idiosyncratic quality in a.
Absolutely, assuming they pass the first kind of filter, though, so to get past the first filter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what matters, and that will always matter. And so then I go back and I realize each student needs to be approached in a very tailor-made way. We need to understand them and somehow help them to be the best versions of they can, and also to develop their own opinions. They need to be opinionated, actually, but these opinions need to come from it needs to contain their personal experiences too. So I think their opinions come not from their personal experiences, but a collection of whatever is in the common public cyber environment.
I understand. So do you think editorial design and publishing should occupy a more central place in design curricula today?
Yes, certainly. Because first of all, it is whether digital or print, it is still a very important industry, after school, when we look at it like in terms of finding a job or whatever, or being entrepreneurial. So thinking about professional future of a student, I think it is because there are so many different kinds of publishing. It is a very rich industry. So I do believe, and also like everything you teach in that framework actually is very helpful in everything else, editing, building relationships, reading, questioning. It's very collaborative. I don't know, we can find so many good things. And
how would you implement that?
There could be so many. At Pratt's undergrad department already, the graphic design intensive one is basically a bookmaking project. So I think that kind of projects, like you work on one subject and you create both content and design and everything of a book as one person teaches you all the ingredients of a book, but also like all roles which act in bookmaking, and in bookmaking is similar also to filmmaking. In fact, I learned bookmaking from filmmakers. So it can be, if you a little learn about abstract thinking, you can transfer to that knowledge to so many areas. So bookmaking, also maybe a couple of different kinds of entrepreneurial courses where a student can launch an independent project, which is a publishing project, different media. It doesn't need to be, like the monetization aspect doesn't need to be, that's important initially, but like to launch project, publishing project could be any kind of. It can be a zine, it can be a blog, doesn't matter. It can be an app. What else can be in it? And also these projects allow. This is the best part. You can work individually and also collaboratively. So you can design these projects for different, you can actually, in fact, if it were possible, you could work on one single project for a whole semester. I think Beatrice Colomina worked on projects like that, like huge research projects with our graduate students, which turn into both exhibitions and books. So like one group of students work on one thing for a whole semester. These can be, again, since I'm thinking a lot, but it can be a micro project and it can be a huge project. So you can, in this framework, you can design many projects.
So could independent publishing that you mentioned operate as an alternative educational space parallel to the university?
You mean like you have some kind of a publishing ecosystem and then students learn there?
Learning platform. Yes.
Oh, sure. Because it has, I knew it before, but I also experienced with Manifold, it has all the aspects now that you also have, like you think about distribution, you think about social media, you think about internal structure, financing, and tone of voice. Here branding is in it too, because branding is so important for designers. We keep talking about branding all the time. So in publishing, you have branding in it. You have, in fact, publishing, you have everything. You have community building. You need to think about, obviously, political issues. So ideology comes in. I think it is some kind of a... it doesn't lack anything, it has everything from distribution to, when I think of it, is there anything? And also now they call, for example, New York Times a technology company which publishes a newspaper. So,
Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. So how do you balance the creative freedom and discipline when guiding design of the future?
How do you balance creativity with?
How do you balance letting students, be more loose with the stricter areas of design, with the more disciplined areas of design?
Well, that's, I think, a question for another person, because I think discipline. I don't think there is any. Design needs a lot of discipline. It needs commitment. It is hard work. It needs focus. I don't think there is anything romanticized about it. I don't think, I never thought, since I worked for artists and curators and art institutions almost all my career, which wasn't necessarily my choice, but that happened. I do believe in terms of they from my point of view, they live in a different planet. I think designers need to be. I think our freedom could come from very disciplined routine. Like when you have a very disciplined routine, you have a freedom for your thoughts. So,
yeah,
is it?
Yes, absolutely.
And
absolutely. There is freedom within discipline, you're saying?
Yes, the more disciplined you are, the more you have time in your brain. And somehow you need to consciously create layers in your brain, be conscious about those layers and be very disciplined, I think. Or maybe this kind of the solitude we were talking about, that I came to solitude when you were talking about slowness of drawing. Somehow in your everyday life, to be free, you need to have some kind of a quiet, and that quiet only can come with a disciplined approach, I think.
So, in your experience, what do students really need that they don't ask for?
Yeah, I will repeat myself, but if faith in themselves and in their actions.
Sorry.
If faith in
confidence.
themselves and in their actions, in their actions mostly, their faith in their own actions.
But confidence comes from some kind of cultivation, right?
Yeah, but it's I had driver's license years ago, and then never drove, and during pandemic I learned how to drive by a British YouTuber. He said at some point in the beginning, actually, in the first video, I think how to, start a car or something. He says, to be able to drive well, you need confidence. To be confident, you need to drive well. So I think it is like, I think driving in that sense, like you have to make your territory you act in, bigger and bigger, but like you make it bigger, get more confident, you get more confident, you make it bigger, kind of.
Absolutely. So also, I'll be interested to know, tell us about Manifold Journal.
Wow. That is something that I'm so happy about, and I'm still excited. It was what I mean, I can talk about too long, and as you realize, I talk in circles. So tell me, what do you want to know about
this podcast? Talks to colleagues, talks to all kinds of stakeholders in design education, people in design education. So what would your message be about your journal to the community?
It had so many, I learned so much from it that I didn't expect in the beginning, because I started it with the intention somehow to create a platform for designers and architects to write, and also to write subjectively, because as a person from Turkey, my native language is Turkish, and I learned about so many things reading English or German texts. So I wanted to learn, and I started publishing as a method for research, actually, like what kind of world do we live in, and what do my friends think? What do they how do they perceive? What do they think? Because I didn't know. So like a friend of mine, I always thought, for example, what does an intellectual, well-educated, preferably designer woman experiences when she goes to Hajj? Like no one. Or, if you lose someone to cancer, how do you experience your life in hospital when you are having someone, a loved one, close to death? Like all these things. So when a designer writes about these things, he writes differently, actually, I think. When you describe a hospital room, you describe it differently, although maybe our experiences in losing someone may be similar. But the way we describe things are different, I think. So anyway, this is how it started, and it turned out also maybe because of the time in Turkey at that moment, none of my designer friends wanted to write about design. So like we had very important architecture historians writing about crime movies, etc. Everyone wrote about other things that they sort of know a lot. But what happened was some kind of a dynamic between contributors started to develop, and I also organized a lot of events, so people started to get to know each other. And I think we published until now almost more than 3,000 original texts. So some of the topics which are written about, I think there is no match on the internet, even other languages. So somehow as a platform, it really became a reason for people to write who didn't think they would write at some point. It helped a lot of PhD students during their PhD process, because when you work on your PhD, you read a lot, you do a lot of research, you are overwhelmed, you can't start to write your thesis, etc. So like somehow they feel stuck. So they used Manifold, to get the rhythm, to write things about they are researching on, but necessarily their thesis, so it became some kind of a writing exercise platform because it's less serious, you can make mistakes. So it became some kind of a training ground for people who want to be more serious writers eventually, or academicians. Yeah, so it became some kind of a research, learning. It became an environment, really. When I go into the CMS, like to prepare, let's say, tomorrow's page, I feel like it is a space indeed where people read. I mean, I'm so, one thing that I never regret anything, but this I regret. I should have started like 30 years ago. And like, I'm so, I mean, it's not late, of course, but I somehow, I mean, it's such a
wonderful.
Yeah.
So looking ahead, what kind of design school or learning environment do you believe the future requires?
I mean, certainly, I think maybe less formal. I mean, somehow more laboratory-like or more studio-like, a bit more artistic, maybe more messy. I mean, still, I believe in structure. Like, this is why you need to have some kind of a guide, a structure which allows you to create, to develop your own kind of discipline. I think I am not 100% sure what EU did, but it happened in Turkey before, and then it happened in EU when centralized, like standardizing.
Yeah.
Could you the education? I think making schools similar so that like transferring from one school to other, or, like all these, making that easier. It had advantages, but I think we have more diverse school, like higher education, which is not like, because I think, I mean, some kind of going back to 50 years before, maybe, like weird schools aren't, it shouldn't be compatible, like education should be, there should be more options for students, I think. Different schools. Messy education.
Sounds great. Is there anything we talk about we haven't touched upon?
I mean, no, I can't think.
Oh, perfect. Well, listen, thank you for coming to the podcast. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you for having me.
It was a great conversation. Thank you. Okay, perfect.